Oh yeah, it says recording. Cool.
Does it say recording?
There's a little red flashing.
Okay. Oh, I see it up in my corner too. Hi everybody, welcome to The Bold Vocal. I'm Carissa Schrader, and today I have like the most exciting treat for me in the world. I don't know if it's exciting for you or not, but I hope it is, and it really should be. So I'm really excited to introduce one of my strongest mentors in my whole career. Probably I would call you my mentor, even though we haven't worked together in such a long time. But I really always think of you when I'm thinking of how should I do things in my navigating my singing career. You are the voice in my mind. So I'm going to go ahead and call this woman my mentor. She is Beth Cohen. She is currently a member of the classic rock band Boston, like Boston, the band Boston, not like a tribute.
Right, not the town.
So she's also toured with Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, Julio Iglesias, and John Secada. She's recorded vocals for Pink and Barbra Streisand. Holy cow. And she's been coaching voice for over 25 years. Some of her high-end A-lister students you might be familiar with are Camila Cabello. Is that how you say it? Is it the Spanish?
Yeah.
Chayenne. Oh my gosh, he's a dreamboat. Jada, Pinket-Smith, and Lindsay Lohan. So that's like the umbrella statement about Beth, but there's so much more. And if I can really quickly share my first experience of you, it's so unforgettable to me. Because I was in college and Beth taught me at University of Miami before she was my private coach. And I was in the jazz voice program there, and we did a pop rock class, like a contemporary.
Rock ensemble, I think it was called.
Yeah. So it was really cool. We had to pick some like contemporary tunes, and we would chart them out, and we'd have a band, and it's kind of like your sort of intro to top 40 gig. Like if you're going to go out on stage and make money as a singer, this is kind of the chops you need to know. And of course, this was like right in my wheelhouse. I was in a jazz program, and before I entered the jazz program, I really hadn't even very much heard any jazz. I was just didn't want to be in musical theater, and I didn't want to sing classical. And at that time, there weren't a whole lot of other options. So I'm glad to see that the voice sphere is expanding a bit to train people in different styles. But that's a side note. The story I'm trying to tell is that, like a typical college kid, you know, I think I was in probably boxer shorts and a baggy t-shirt with like a greasy, messy bun on my hair and some flip-flops, and sitting in my class just all like, okay. And it was an evening class. So at that point in the day, I was like fully slouched. And we're waiting for you to come in, and Beth walks in, and I think you had leather pants on, I think. But they were definitely like Beth pants, right? They were like super huggy, curvy, beautiful, like, and she had on just this killer outfit, and like she was just such a fucking queen. I curse in my audience. I'm sorry. I try, but I'm so excited sometimes.
I'm sure they've heard that word before.
Yes. She is a queen, and I was like, who is that? And I was like, what's happening right now? And then it was our teacher, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I need this in my life. And then I think I waited to sing for a little while until a lot of my peers had gone, and the peers were very jazzy. So some of them were very confronted by the idea of singing pop or rock. They were like, but this is not my passion. I have to scat. Oh my God. It was like earth shattering. And then, you know, it was in my wheelhouse. So I stood up and sang, and Beth gave me the first A in our class. And I doubt you remember that, but I will never forget.
But I do remember you got it, like you understood it. I knew you were going to work. You were going to find gigs. I was like, oh, good. She gets it. I do remember that.
Yeah. And yeah, so somebody who I was like kind of, and honestly, these days I really believe in, you know, collaboration over competition. But as an 18-year-old girl and in a competitive society and culture where we compare ourselves, I think that's, you know, where my mindset was at the time. And there was a girl who was really good, and she was always kind of like a little nose to nose with me, and also a little bit, our attitudes didn't quite blend. She was definitely edgy with me, and she sang, and you were like, that's the very closest thing I've seen to an A yet. Like, that was pretty good. Here's what you could work on. And then I immediately was like, I want to sing, like, let me sing. And then I sang, and you're like, that's the A. And I was like, boom, I did it. And I felt very validated in that moment. So anyway, but that has probably been shaped my confidence as an artist, you know, since that young moment. And and then eventually, because the jazz thing actually wasn't my cup of tea, I ended up leaving that voice program and hiring Beth as my private coach. So I've always actually valued a private mentorship over traditional learning sometimes. And I learned an amazing amount of stuff in that program, including in your class. But I knew I was one that I wanted to pound the pavement and work and get out there and do the damn thing. I was like ready yesterday. So all the academia was actually feeling quite stifling at that point. And I switched into English and learned how to write really well, which is serving me well now. And yeah, so you have been just such an amazing part of my journey. And I want to share you with everyone today.
Thank you. It means so much to me because, we were friends after being teacher-student. But it means a lot because I think that's the reason why we teach, is to give that new upcoming person the tools, the skills, the incentive to do what they want to do in their lives, because I got a chance to do that in my life, and I'm happy and I feel successful. So if I can pass that on in some way to that next person, that's why we teach. Yeah. And so that really makes me happy because I'm like, oh, I helped you.
You did. And you helped me become a really good teacher. So beyond just
good.
Really carried over. And honestly, our work together is relatively short in comparison to the amount of time we're talking about that's elapsed. This has been probably about a 20-year relationship at this point, which is insane to me. But, we really only worked together in that capacity for maybe 2 years. And probably I was not as disciplined as I should have been in that time. But none of us are. So I want to give a lightning round of questions that I didn't show you already. So these are, if you're not prepped on it.
I got this.
So I want you to just top of your head answer, and then if you feel the need to justify, you can. But I really would like it to just be like that. So who's your favorite song or artist that was introduced to you by a student?
Oh my God. It's okay. It sounds so stupid and cliche, but a student introduced me to Billie Eilish.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, she's kind of interesting. And I had never heard of her, and she wasn't on the radio at the time. And the next thing I knew, my student who was so in love with what she was doing, then I started hearing more about her. And then I started listening to her and, understanding why it was such a wave of popularity that she was finding. Yeah. So that sticks out in my brain.
I think that's beautiful because she is really part of a new generation of musicians, and that I was definitely not on my radar either until
me neither.
A friend of mine. It was not a client. It was my friend Lauren showed me her, and Lauren's got a kid who's like 10, 11. So he's kind of in that sphere, but also, she's just way cooler than I am in general. So she showed me her, and wow, just amazing. Okay, second question is, how old were you when you knew you were a singer?
5.
Yeah, little, right?
Yeah. I was running around at the time when I was 5. Annie was on Broadway, and it was very big. And as a 5-year-old, I knew about that, and I would run around the house singing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow" in my best Andrea McCardle voice. That was Annie at the time, and I was going to be Annie. So I was about 5.
That's awesome. I sang that same song about that same age on a picnic table in my neighbor's backyard as part of a variety show called What a Riot. And my stepdad still talks about that moment. I was probably about that same age, 5 or 6. I was in kindergarten, I think. And my stepdad was my neighbor. That's like a whole other story. But at the time, he wasn't my stepdad. He was our neighbor. And his daughter was in it as well. And he was like, he'll still tell me to this day, like, he's like, well, you guys were all cute and dancing and doing your little routines. It was really cute because y'all wanted to put on a show. And then he's like, you stood on that table and you were this really skinny little kid and you opened your mouth and this huge sound came out. And we were all just like, whoa, what the hell was that? Like, where did that come from? And so that was also a song. I did not do splendidly on that performance. I lost the whole bridge section about, when I think of a day that's gray, low. That was beyond me at that age. So I did fail.
Good melody. Like when you think about that, like that's a pretty serious melody, and for 5-year-olds to grab that, that's understandable.
Come what may is what tripped me up. I didn't understand the phrase. I was like, come what may, like what may? This May?
Yeah, right. What May? June, July.
Okay. Ooh, this one is kind of, I tend to not go on the negative side of things, but this one's kind of fun and gossipy.
I'm cool.
What song makes you cringe when a client brings it in to work on?
Oh my gosh. I would say what pops into my brain is not a specific song, but what always makes me cringe is when I have a student that is not really a strong singer, and they bring me in the ultimate diva repertoire.
Yes.
So, maybe they decided they wanted to sing 2 months ago and they're not exactly real great with matching of their notes, or pitches are an issue for them. And they bring me in Christina Aguilera.
Yeah, something very high level.
Something extremely high level. I cringe because I want to help them achieve their goals, but sometimes those goals have to be a little more small, so they are within reach, so that we can move up the levels of what they can achieve.
Totally.
So it's not a song, but when that happens, I cringe.
That's funny. Mine, I have one, which is, it's Landslide. When people bring me Landslide, I'm like,
oh, really?
Landslide. I love Landslide, and I love singing it, actually. But it's really tough, and I feel like it's a kind of a type of person that brings it often, is like, because it's that song evokes such a strong emotion in people. And it's one of those songs that the reason it makes me cringe is not because I don't love the song or the artist or helping people sing it. None of that. I love that song, and I would teach it every day, but it's deceptively hard. Some of those notes are really low in the register. And they're also there's like a couple little intervals in there that are kind of tricky, like, and like moving in that shape, there's the same spots over and over that challenge people. And it's like, I kind of get a little scared of teaching it, because I'm like, oh man, we're going to work this forever, and you're not going to get this little part.
Funny, right? Hard. I have never had anyone bring in Landslide. That's
my gosh, I must have
a Fleetwood Mac, but not Landslide. And sometimes I tend to recommend Fleetwood Mac because some of her melodies are just a little simpler. There's not a lot of acrobatics.
They're like speech range. A lot are like speech level. They're like kind of right in here. There's nothing super high, nothing super low. But Landslide's got a couple of intervallic things that are really crazy. And anyway. So, but if you're watching and you want to do Landslide, we can do that. I'm not.
None of the students are going to pick Landslide.
What I'm saying is, it's harder than you think. I'm just going to say that. Okay, last question. Can anyone learn to sing?
Okay, here's my answer to this.
I knew this was the lightning round. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Anyone is capable of improving their singing, but I believe singing where someone you're going black. Singing where someone is going to achieve the typical goals of a singer. I want to be in a band. I want to do recordings. I want to be on stage in a show. That level of singing takes a certain amount of natural talent and natural ability. So can anyone learn to sing? Well, they can certainly get better from the starting point. But if there isn't that innate talent, the goal is going to be much harder to achieve if there's not really an innate talent. And that's how I feel about it. And I always use the analogy myself. If someone said, Beth, you should go out and play sports. Let's play volleyball. I have zero talent for sports. It's not something that I was blessed with. I could have a coach every day. They could tell me how to move my hands and my body and what to look for. And, maybe would I get a little better and make contact with the ball? Yeah, probably. But I will never be a great athlete because it's just not a talent that I have.
Yeah.
So I kind of compare it to that. Everyone can improve, but you do need a lot of that natural ability.
Yeah, I agree. I compare it to cooking often because I think I do actually believe that singing is a craft and that like there are mechanisms that you can learn, and I think you can train the skill of hearing, and like I definitely think that
Correct, which is what I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's just some people that are going to taste food with a little bit more sensitivity, and they're going to have this balance, and they're going to have a knack for it, and like that natural, like, oh, I bet if I threw this in here, this would bring out this color, right? And they see it in this way that a cookbook, you know, here's how you do it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Can't teach you that, right? So I definitely do think, I also though, because the older I get and the more I teach, I'm getting more and more woo-woo as I go this way, which I don't think maybe our paths have stayed in that alignment. We can talk about that if you want or not. But for me, I've become more and more spiritual in my life. And so I kind of believe singing is like a form of prayer, right? Like, and I am very careful when I say these things because I do not ever want anyone to think I'm like a Midwestern mega church saved soul for Jesus, you know, like this is.
No, I can confirm that.
I adapt, but I also think that like in my life, and maybe you can relate to this, but singing has been how I've been able to kind of reconnect to my own source power, and how I've also been able to pray, like those moments of despair and those moments where you feel really unheard and really unseen and very desperate. Singing somehow has calmed that for me and given me a glimpse of something peaceful. So I think in that sense, as much as I think, like you're saying, you know, not everyone's going to go record, not everyone's going to go on stage, but from just the self-expression standpoint, I really like to teach anyone who wants to sing because I think it's a human expression, like a right, a birthright.
Well, and I agree. And that's why, and sometimes people say to me, the biggest question is, you know, what do you do when you get someone who's just terrible? You know, when you have a student who comes in and they're just really awful. My job always has been not to judge if they're good or not.
Yeah.
My job is to help them sing better.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done all the years of my teaching. And, you know, better is relative. Sometimes people achieve that goal that they were looking for, to be in a band or to make a recording. And sometimes people work and because of maybe just the lack of innate talent, or maybe the lack of dedication to what they want to do, they don't achieve the goal, and it spills away, and they stop taking lessons, or they stop.
If you've got the talent, then the discipline's going to take you really far. And if you don't have the talent, the discipline's going to take you pretty freaking far. And if you have no discipline, you're not going to go anywhere, because this is an act of repeated, and actually I have a whole thing about the word discipline because it makes me feel really icky. It makes me feel like I'm being told to do my homework, and like I should sit in the corner and be good. And like it actually awakens my rebel spirit in a really fiery and fantastic way. It makes me want to throw both middle fingers up and be like, I'm not practicing. And so learning that about myself, this is one of the things I teach, is just like the mindset around the practice space, because I've started having to kind of take different rituals to make myself practice, because it feels like I'd rather be doing something else. I got to do my homework. Like it's got this very sticky old feeling about it. So that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to teach on a bit, is that the practice mindset is very important, because really the discipline can take an unskilled singer farther than a talented singer who doesn't do the work, right? Well, like if there's not a huge gap.
You're right. And sometimes the way that I explain practicing to my students, because I've never really been fond of practicing myself, although I find myself doing a lot of practicing because I get called for gigs that maybe I'm secretly not really ready for, and I just go and practice and practice and practice, and then show up and they think I'm great. Yeah. But they know the 6 weeks in my studio going crazy.
Thank you for saying that.
But that's one of the reasons I think why I've found success, is because I force myself to practice and learn those things and do those things. But what I tell everybody, because sometimes I think, and you probably feel the same way, you know, here's our instrument. This is our instrument. We didn't go to the store and buy one of these.
Right.
Here's our instrument. when you go to the store and you buy a guitar, or you buy a flute or whatever instrument, you don't just pick it up and go, yeah, and you're great at it. You spend hours upon hours getting your fingers to work, learning how to make the notes and the strumming if it's guitar, the fingering on the flute and all that kind of stuff. It's hours and hours of practicing. So vocalists who here is our instrument, why would that be any different? We really have to spend hours in culmination practicing our instrument, whether it be learning melodies or agility so we can do these runs that we want to do, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, we've got to practice this instrument just like if we picked up a flute or a guitar.
Yeah.
And what I just try to tell people is, look, for my students, I have a lot of grown-ups that have a real job or have families or they have children themselves and they've got lots of stuff to do. It's hard to take 30 minutes every day and lock yourself in a room and practice. So what I tell people, look, we're a double tasking world. When you're blowing your hair straight, you play the lesson tape and start working on those runs. Or, when you're microwaving dinner and you're sitting instead of putzing around on your phone for that 6 minutes while microwaving, you're running your song. Because if you've got those 5 minutes here, 6 minutes there, 10 minutes here, if you do that every day, 5 days a week, you've been practicing. Mm-hmm. And then you come into your lesson, hopefully the next week, and you've thought about it and you've practiced. So that's my big thing.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that, because I think that's part of the overwhelm is singing such a big lifelong mission, and it feels really big sometimes in this huge, huge hurdle. Even for really advanced singers, I think getting to the next level feels big sometimes. And so we get in that perfectionistic zone of like, well, I can't go in the practice room and no. There's like all these reasons. Plus, I think singing's a bit confronting, and like the things that aren't going well feel pretty awful sometimes. And we're like, it's much easier to scroll to do other things. So, thank you for that reminder. That's really beautiful, because even I find myself in my same practice trap in my own singing career. I'm a procrastinator. That's my style, is throw it all in at the last minute, which, by the way, doesn't work when you're singing, because it's a whole series of muscles and coordinations. You don't learn to do push-ups overnight. You do push-ups for a month, right?
So true. So true.
Okay, so who's your ideal voice client? Like, what kind of people are you looking to attract in your studio?
Probably first and foremost, which kind of ties into what you were asking about, can you learn to sing and any skill level? Probably my favorite student as a blanket statement is the student that really wants to sing and wants to sing better. They're really interested in it. They have a great attitude about coming to a lesson and learning new things. So that's kind of my favorite student, whether they're coming in as a great skilled singer or whether they're just coming in as a novice or even someone who has issues with pitch or whatever. If they love it and they're into it, that's my favorite. But I have to say, selfishly, it's really special when someone who is already a very talented singer comes in, but they've got technical issues. They're losing their voice at the end of a gig. They're having pain or something. I love working with a student like that, because once I show them these couple of techniques to fix, or I point out, oh, you've been doing this wrong thing physically and technically when you're going up for those high notes, and then they fix it, and their world changes, and they come back to me and they go, oh my God, I did my gig last night and I didn't lose my voice for the first time. Yeah, that gives me the greatest joy. So that's probably kind of my specific favorite student to work with.
I think I have a really mixed bag of clientele, and that's partly because I'm still narrowing my own focus and what I want to do with the business long term. And eventually I will start to kind of narrow who I'm taking and why. But right now I'm just kind of playing with everyone who wants to sing, and I'm really enjoying that process. But a lot of my clients, I think, are probably not as far along as yours, and you have developed a reputation of kind of coaching the upper echelon of talent, I would say, in your region. So fell into that category at some point as my ego is like, yay, that's me. But you know, for me, it's fun because I think I get a lot of people who are really afraid to step onto the stage, and out of the trying and into the doing. So I've had the experience of being able to really kind of push people's safety zone a lot and throw them to the wolves a bit. And that's how I've always learned everything is trial by fire, and like, throw me to the pack, I'm going to come back and lead, you know, I'm that type. So and in fact, even this series, like, that I'm doing is like, I'm a little bit ahead of it, but like, I'm basically creating it as it's releasing. I like didn't plan ahead. I will in the future. Because
well, it kind of makes me have a question for you. Has there ever been a time where you took that student, you know, who was terribly afraid, and you threw him into the fire, and it didn't turn out well?
So far, not really.
I don't know.
Not really thus far. I mean, there were performances that weren't great, but everybody's kind of come back from that, which is, I mean, that's kind of what I'm coaching on, is like, you got to fall down. Like, I was talking to you off the call or off the recording about the first time that my band Rosa's Cantina performed on stage, and it kind of tanked. Like, you gotta fail. And so I really I encourage the culture of failure in my studio, and I really that's a value that I have, is that you got to fumble before you're great. You got to walk before you run, right? So far, everybody has like kind of trusted me through that process. My biggest worry was I have a 6-year-old who I've never worked with kids really, and she just seemed kind of exceptional in her little spirit. She's amazing. She's written songs with me. She's like my songwriter. She's 6.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
We wrote a song about how the sunflowers face the sun when they need energy.
Oh my gosh.
Freaking life. It's amazing. So anyway, Eloise is her name. And she, when we talked about doing a showcase, literally at one point, like folded her arms and dug her heels in and was like, no. She just like, she straight up was like, nope,
wow.
Not doing it. And so it took me weeks and months of like, I'd bring it up and it would shut down our lesson. Like, she'd stop singing, she'd go in the corner, she'd cry, she'd lock herself in the bathroom. She was done with me as soon as it came up. And she's a kid, so it's like, that's how they do. They don't like, it's not like us. We're like, well, that sounds good. Maybe I'll think about it. Wishy-washy. We want to people please. They do not care. And she, so we had kind of been talking to her. Her mom and me have been kind of like, well, look, it's something that's really fun. She's like, well, I just want to work with you. I just want to sing here. Why do I have to sing on stage? I'm like, trust me, it's the reward. So we did get her to do it, but it took me months of kind of like talking her off that ledge. And what's funny is all my adult clients in this same showcase, they, in that whole 2 months leading up to it, were like, yeah, we're going to do this. It's going to be awesome. And the week of that thing, I got 100 emails like, I can't, I'm sick. My family's got a thing, you know, I just don't feel ready. We're not going to do this, but thank you for the opportunity. And they were it was adult. Like, they were very like, I've made a choice. I respect you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, but no thank you. And I was like, oh, no. This is not a choice. Like, nope, this is not a choice. So it was fun to watch the adults totally break down, because they had been pretending they were fine all the way up until the deadline. And the kids were freaking out the whole time. Yes. Yeah. Freaked out the whole time, and we worked on it we chipped away at it, right? And then when she ruled that show, she had a side pony and some glitter on her eyelids, and she got up there and crushed, and the adults were like shaking in their boots. And so I think the kids show us so much about what we hide so much in our adulthood, in our expectations of what we think people want to hear, and what we think we're ready for, and we tell ourselves we're okay, but then you like avoid that little intuitive hit that like, this is actually scary. There's something here. There's something that's telling me something, and we ignore it, and then we get sick and we freak out and we.
Right. Yeah, no, very, very true. And it's funny because the adults avoid it in just a very much more secretive way.
I'm fine.
That's funny.
That's really fine. Okay. We kind of already talked about your practice, so I'll skip that question. I think you answered it really well.
Yeah.
In like, I mean, but like, let's say if somebody's training for, like you said, like you get a gig that's a little out of your reach, how often are you practicing, and what does that look like?
Well, I'll use the Boston gig as an example. So they called me to do the gig, and they called me to do the gig as a vocalist and guitarist. Guitar is not my first instrument.
I know. I remember when you announced that. I was like, wow, she learned to play guitar. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and that I probably shouldn't say this on a public platform, but yeah, I pretty much
only like 10 people watching this. It's okay.
Right. It's okay. 10 people, a strong but mighty crowd. No, they called me, and vocally the gig was mine. You know, that was really primarily why they called. But it's a singing, playing band, and so I couldn't just stand there and be a singer. So they were like, yeah, you know, we need you to play these parts and this stuff, and so it wasn't practicing for my vocal parts, because those were pretty easy for me and it was much more in my wheelhouse. But instrumentally, I had to do a ton of work. I mean, I practiced more for the Boston gig than I had practiced in college, or maybe since college.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about time-wise, it was literally every day, every single day. Sometimes I got 2 hours in, sometimes I got 4 or 5 hours in, not consecutively.
Yeah.
There would be an hour here, or if I was in between students and I had a 2-hour break, I was grabbing the guitar and the keyboards and learning the parts for the tour. There were days where I just locked myself in the room all day, and my practicing, and it probably happens to other people, so nobody should feel bad about when it happens, depending on how intense the practicing is. Sometimes I can only go for 25 minutes before I need to get up, make myself a snack, go outside, stretch, and then come back. So my brain, just once it starts to happen where my brain loses it, and sometimes it's not that long. It can be 25 minutes and I need a break. And then sometimes I'm going and I go, oh man, where'd the time go? But when I need a break, I take a break.
Absolutely. I feel the same way in the studio. I feel like we're very pressured to sing over and over and over for hours on end on the same take. And like, as a singer, if your brain is either just not making a connection, like a part keeps going wrong in the same place, even though you've talked about it and you're aware of it. It like disheartens you to a point where it will never sound good. You have to walk away and do something else, or try change songs, or, let the guitar player go in and do his part for a while and come back. But I love that
100%.
To kind of honor that space, because we're a human biological instrument and we have thoughts, and they're not always productive thoughts. And also we have a lot of other ecosystem to balance, with mood and hydration and whatever, all of that.
Yeah, but 100%. But I think a lot of times when there are lesser experienced singers, they tend to beat themselves up for it. Yeah. I don't beat myself up for that. If I need a break, I need a break. And it's as simple, as straightforward as that.
That is sort of, I don't own this catchphrase. It was actually given to my girlfriend, Rebecca Jade, who was in Siren's Crush.
Oh yeah.
She's on tour with Sheila E. right now. She's crushing it. She's so good. So her husband gave her a hashtag, which is Humble Diva, but I've kind of borrowed it and adopted it as like my own mindset. And I think of you in that way as well. Because the humble diva is not like showing up late and being a jerk and demanding green M&Ms. The humble diva is setting boundaries and being very clear about her needs and saying, hey, I need a break. I am not a guitar. I am not a piano. You cannot bang on me until you get it right. Like, I must stop and reset, and being willing to say like, hey, if you don't like it, go whatever, jump off the cliff. That's very vital.
And really, I mean, there's never really been a time where, I mean, a lot of times when I need a break, it's mostly private time and practicing. But like you say, in the studio, if there was a moment where I needed a break, no one ever complained about it, because you just say it. It's not a big deal. You just say, hey, this is what I need.
Yeah.
And they're usually fine. They'll give you what you need.
I think a lot of that is a self-confidence and fear issue. I have something that comes up a lot in my pro singers that are working with bands is, and I would love to hear, this is not on my questions, but you just made me really want to hear your take on this, is they are really afraid to ask for what they need from a sound engineer or from a bandmate. Like, I need more monitor, or I need you to turn down. Actually, for me, and I get stuck not on, can you turn me up? I'm fine with that. But looking to a guitar player and saying, hey, can you please turn down? You're crushing me in my ears and I can't hear myself in my voice. And like, so I feel like we're very afraid to look bossy, bitchy, demanding diva. But that's like a reality of singing well, is that you cannot compete with an electrified, amplified instrument. Tell me, talk to me, preach.
I couldn't agree 100% more. And it's funny that you say that, because I usually do that with my students who come in here, pro or novice. We work with microphone, and then I'll put the music on for them. And I teach them right away, no matter what venue you are at. And sometimes it's not as there's not what's the word, accommodating. Sometimes they can't be as accommodating as others, but always ask for what you need. And the thing is that, like anything else, it's how we say it. I always try to teach them nice but firm, firm but nice. Don't be apologetic about it. You don't have to go, I'm so sorry, do you think that you could do it? No. Hey, can you turn down a bit? Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it. It's no more, no less. Hey, I've got too much guitar in my monitor. Can you turn it down? Thanks. Hey, can you turn down 2 notches for me? Perfect.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And it's very simple. And it's tough, because it's a fight that vocalists always have, because just the exact words you said, we cannot compete with amplifiers. We just can't. So, guitar players have amplifiers, and the nature of the beast, that's going to be louder. And drummers, the instrument itself is louder, and they're playing firmly to get a feel and all that kind of stuff. And it's very tough to compete with that. But I have no problem just turning around and say, hey, listen, guys, we all have to turn down like 3 notches. And that's it, and most of the time it's effective. I mean, it's never really been a negative experience. It's just sometimes, they don't want to turn it down, because I get the whole, but it's got to be on level 9, so I really get that distortion sound. Yeah, I understand it, but it's a show and it's 5 of us, so you got to turn it down 2 notches. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
And you,
yeah,
it's nice.
Would you mind? It's just, please do. Yeah.
No, right. And I try to teach them, never be apologetic about it, because when you approach it like, oh, you're asking them for this kind of bad thing. No, it's too loud. The level is uneven. And unfortunately, and I remember doing this at UM, we used to be in these practice rooms, and they were tiny rooms. They were, 7 feet by 5 feet rooms. They were probably not even big.
In a very
right. And I can remember specifically, because unfortunately there are many times instrumentalists are really not listening to what's going on with the vocalists. They're just listening to themselves. And it was so loud, and I'm trying to turn myself up and trying to ask them to turn down, and I'm not getting anywhere. And I literally at one point just went like this. And made no sound, just pretended. And everyone was like, and they thought it was just so great. And that showed me at that point, I really learned. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to push my voice to try to be louder than these people. After I asked 2 times, maybe 3 times, I'm not doing it. I'm going to pretend. Yeah. Because they just don't listen. So if it comes to a certain point like that, sometimes you have to be drastic, but in order to save yourself like the stress and heartache and, oh my God, extreme things like that, not in the show per se, but like in rehearsals and things like that, it just showed me that they weren't listening. They weren't listening at all to the vocals. Totally. And, our initial, sort of assumption is, don't you hear my vocals? Can't you hear my vocals? Can't you hear right, that they're not that they're not up here where you can hear them. The unfortunate reality is, and I'm not dissing the instrumentalists, I'm just saying that's the nature of the beast.
Well, so we all have our, single-minded perspective from time to time.
Right. And so once the vocalist understands that that's the battle, you're a lot less afraid to say, hey, let's turn it down 3 notches. Give them something specific. Hey,
I was gonna say, that's very specific.
Very specific.
It's not like a little or a lot. It's like,
because a little, they turn around and they go, a hair of their amplifier down.
I say a hair all the time, because that's my own fear. I'm like, can we turn it down a hair? Like a hair.
Right.
Like, I'm not asking for too much, am I? And
Well, no, but that's the thing, when the singer approaches it like fearful or not securely and not like or he is deserving of it. No, don't be apologetic for that. Firm but nice. So that's most of the time we get a good result from that. Not always, but most.
I'm going to move on really quickly. I want to wrap up, but I have actually a lot I still want to talk to you about, but I don't want to make this too long for the people who are watching it. So I think one question I think a lot of people would probably want to hear from you as like from an aspirational standpoint, if there are singers out there that want to go that far in their career like you have, to tour with national acts such as Boston and Barbra Streisand, and to do these really high level, very pro, travel-based and well-compensated, I assume, gigs. What is the pathway for that singer? Because I know I won't say what I know. I will let you say what you know.
So there's no one particular answer, but the general pathway is going to include, number one, being at the top of your craft. Being the best singer that you can be, and really proving that on the gigs that you do, you show up prepared, you show up sounding good, you show up looking good. That leads to making connections and networking, because in all of my career, ever since going to college, all of the gigs I've ever gotten, maybe with the exception of one where it was just a routine audition, have been because somebody knew the kind of job that I did, so they called me.
Yeah.
I was networking. I had proved my worth on a gig, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's really good at that. Let's call her." So it's being prepared. It's networking and letting people know what you do, and then it's also putting oneself out there. Sometimes it's an audition situation. In a lot of road gigs, it's not. It's really who you know and who calls you. But you have to be out there so they can see you, know you're good, in order to call you. And that may be going to networking events for the music industry. The Grammys and the Recording Academy, I know they've got their Pacific Southwest chapter. We have a Miami, Florida chapter. Meeting other people, getting yourself out there, because that's how they will know to call you. That's how they will know to send you on this.
They can't hire who they're not aware of.
Right. They cannot call you if they don't know you're around.
Yes, exactly.
So those are probably the three basic things that proved very well for my career, and still does, because I still get calls that way because they know what I do, or I showed up on a gig and everyone was so happy, and it leads to something else.
I have never ever had an experience of hearing you sing where I did not get just like, wow, and also complete pro, completely comfortable in herself and on stage, and just great at what you do. So I do think that it's no surprise to me that you get all the good calls, because why would it's always fun to watch you sing. So I hope people will get to do that. I want to talk about really quickly, and like super quick on this one, drugs, booze, smoking, drinking. What are your takes? I know you personally, so I know, but I want to hear what you say to singers.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and I tell all my students the same thing. Look, we're all grown-ups, or, for the grown-ups that are grown-ups, we can do what we want to do. A lot of it is common sense. A lot of it is, it's going to abuse your body, drinking and drugs and smoking cigarettes. And if you have the body that can take it and you sound good the next day, good for you.
Yeah.
Most people don't. So, if you're the person that needs to not get wasted the night before a gig, then you don't do that. If you can smoke pot and you don't sound all hacked up and you're coughing on your gigs, good for you.
Yeah.
Most people can't. So it's all about valuing what you sound like, what your performance is, and also taking care of your body, because this is our instrument. When this one breaks, when this one is destroyed from abuse with drugs and alcohol, not sleeping, whatever, we don't go to the music store and buy another instrument. Right. We have one, and that's the only one. So it's ideal to take care of it.
I love it. I will share this. I've talked about it on my social media once before a while back, but it's been a while, and I will share this story, which is when I did see you last, I had been smoking cigarettes for a while.
Yes, I know. I can't believe it.
I can't either, really, because I didn't ever even try a cigarette till I was in my mid-20s, first of all, because I was so dedicated to singing from such a young age that I knew, like, I can't be a smoker, I'm a singer. Like, there's no crossover for me. And what's funny is I know a lot of singers that are really heavy smokers, and they're freaking great. Like, the last person that beat me for an audition that, like, actually got a job I wanted is a hardcore smoker, and I was too. And I am one of those voices that I can withstand a lot of abuse and still sound good. Now, that's not true of me at 10 a.m. or at noon. Like, if I had a daytime gig, my voice would fail and I would sound tight and I would sound hoarse and I would sound tired and all these things. But by 10 p.m. again, so I think this is where singers get in a really tricky spot, and I lived in it for a long time, is that you can be fine from 10 p.m. until 2 or 3 in the morning, you know, and you're also drinking and smoking at those times. So you're kind of reintroducing that condition to the body, and then you sleep in the morning, and then you don't really have to sing until, again, like 8 or 10 p.m. the next night. And then by then your voice is kind of woken up, and then you start to add the alcohol back in and you add it all back in. And it's a really scary cycle. But yeah, if you had to just get up in the morning and sing, or just out of the blue, like just sing, like it's not there. It takes a lot more warming up. And I know some people that can't drink and smoke at all, you know, that it really messes them up right away. And
yeah. Well, and I try to live by a very sort of not hands-off philosophy, but look, there are people that can do that. Famous singers that have smoked their life and they're still smoking and they're still singing, and good for them. I don't wish anything bad. I'm glad that they can still hold it up. But there are a lot of people who can't. And the other thing is that what happens too is age. Sometimes a person can do that at 27. They can't do it at 37, or they can do that at 37, but they can no longer do it at 47. Most of us who are singers, you know, I'm older than some and younger than others. I want to continue to be able to sing through the years. I don't plan on getting a real job in the next 5 or 10 years.
I hate
so
that so much.
I'm going to have to sing. And so I have to know that I've got to sound this good in another 10 years.
Yeah. Well, that's what did it for me when we met, is what you said, because you're like about 10 years older than me, maybe.
Yeah. Not 12 years
older than me, but, you know, just enough that I do trust your perspective, you know, from, you know, someone's standpoint that's been through it before me. And, that was like that moment in shift one when you asked me, because I didn't volunteer that I was smoking. You heard it in my voice. I'm right? Yeah. You looked at me and were like, I have to ask you something, and please don't be offended. Judge. And that was, you really did set it up beautifully and say, I don't judge you, but do you smoke? I can hear this like hoarseness, this raspiness in your voice that I don't remember being there. And that was like a, oh God, like, oh, my voice doesn't sound like it did. And then secondly, you know, that was the perspective you offered me. You're like, hey, you do what you want, like live your life. But you're like, I just got this tour with Boston, and this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But you're like, I think
it might have been the first year I was with them, because that's when we spent time in San
Diego. Yeah.
Yeah.
First or second. I think it was the first. But yeah, you said, you know, I think at the time you were like 44, 45, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. But you're like, hey, I want to do this till I'm 60. I want to do this till I'm 70. Like, I'm on tour with a national act right now. It's amazing. And you were like, point blank, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to want to sing in 10 years. You're going to want to sing in 15 years, and you're going to not be able to. And that was like a huge shake by the shoulders in a very loving way, of course. You know, it was a reality check. I was like, okay.
Did you quit?
I did. Yeah, I did. Every once in a blue moon, if I'm out and partying, I'll have one, and you know, I'll drink. And because we talked about this, I don't remember if we were recording or not, but I have a very rebellious spirit. So if I'm told very hardcore lines of what not to do, it makes me very much want to do them. So I allow myself to play when I'm feeling playful. But as far as slipping back into a daily smoking habit, that's like a big no. It's a hard no for me. So if I notice I'm starting to crave it a lot, and I'm like toying with it more than not, it's a hard stop. It's like, I can't, I'm an addict to it. It was.
Well, look, and the thing is that that's all really you can ask of yourself is just kind of keep it in check and decide what's more important. You know, am I sounding clear? Are my students going to listen to my advice based upon if I can control, you know, the good or bad things I'm doing to my body?
Yeah. Well, and here's the takeaway for me also as somebody that did that and came back is I was singing really well when I was smoking. I could sing my butt off. I've always been able to sing well, right? And I've developed that talent with a lot of time, practice, energy, learning. Like I've put in the work. So no one, I don't think even, I mean, maybe someone like you with such a high perception of hearing a voice like that would be able to tell, but no one, and I remember people saying like, how can you sing like that and smoke? And I don't get it. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I sing great. And then I'd say about 3 to 5 months after I quit singing or smoking, not singing, after I quit smoking, I remember having a night in rehearsal or on a show. And I was like, God, this is easy. When did this get so easy? And like, it's so effortless all of a sudden.
Wow. You don't even realize, I guess.
I had no idea how hard I was working to sing. And all of a sudden it became like, I just could, it was so much more elastic and so much more playful and at ease and all that.
Look at that. Oh, that's great. Look, sometimes you experience the bad in order to understand the good. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a really good metaphor for my life in general, but so I had more, but I want to wrap up because I don't want to keep you any longer. And also I want to make sure our ADD culture is still with us. And I want to make sure we tell them how they can find you because my experience working with you has been so great. And you have some ways to work with you remotely because you're in South Florida. So if anybody is in the South Florida community, they can come right to you. But you teach Skype. Tell me how to find you.
So yeah, I'm in South Florida, and I do teach 5 days a week still when I'm not on tour, which presently I'm not on tour. I do teach Skype, and really it just depends on if a student is far or unable to get here or wants to try something different from their other coach and see if it works better, or I offer some different information from what their other coach is doing or additional information. You can find me at my website, which is South Florida Voice Studios .com, South Florida Voice Studios.com. And my Instagram is at the Beth Cohen. My Facebook is at the Beth Cohen, Twitter at the Beth Cohen. They're all the same. And it was so great to talk to you. Oh my gosh.
Do you still have a masterclass people can enroll in?
What I'm doing now is, and the masterclass video is actually on the website. I get hired by medium to larger groups to come in and work their group with them. So sometimes it's a church music group that it's a group of singers that sings every Sunday in the services, and they need help. And so they hire me to come in and sort of help them with harmonies or group singing, or a couple of people need some technical stuff. There's pitch issues, whatnot. So I do that. I do a lot of religious choirs and whatnot. I do colleges and universities that don't have a very strong music program. Maybe they have a light one or a more classically oriented one, and I come in and work with their singers in the pop world, in the practical world, because a lot of times, just like you had said, I think it was just when you and me were talking personally.
It might have been on the video, but we can.
Yeah, I don't remember. People go to college and the only thing that's offered is sort of these chorus classes. So they take them because it's singing, but it's not really the pop world that they want to be in. Yeah. So the colleges and universities invite me in, and I go in and do a master class of what it's like to be a real singer and pop world, and what it's like to do a gig and get a gig. And so I do quite a bit of that, and that's the master classes that I'm teaching.
Fantastic. Well, I really want to say thank you. I'm going to let you go, but it's just wonderful to connect with you on a lot of different levels. And I really hope that there's a few people watching that really gain some beautiful information and insight from you, because you are the top professional in this field, and you are also a fantastic teacher and coach. So I can't put them in any better hands than you, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, I wish you so much luck. I hope it's successful, both body and mind. And I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Bye, Bethy. Thank you. All right.